Over the past year, AI has moved from hype into real workflows. You've got agents writing code, automating tasks, and even starting to transact on chain. At the same time, though, crypto is still trying to answer where does real value actually live beyond speculation. That leads to something I've been thinking about lately. When AI creates value, who owns it, who gets paid, and how is that enforced? Some of this feels inevitable. Some of it feels a little early, but my goal here is to understand where the real signal is. I'm joined by Tom, the CEO of Metis, and he's also working on lazai, launching within the Metis ecosystem, and is also behind a new Ethereum proposal called ERC-8028. Welcome to the show, Tom.
It's great to be here, Mikhail. I know we had a prior podcast before, but it's always great to talk to you online, in person, and appreciate you contributing to the space always.
Absolutely. The feeling's mutual, and a lot has changed since we last talked. Last time we were primarily talking about Metis. Now it seems like you're starting to onboard builders, and there's a focus towards AI, and rightfully so. It seems to be the cutting edge of technology here. But let's just start with the basics first, Tom. What problem made lazai necessary in the first place?
Probably start with a question as well, and just kind of get the audience to really understand data. Right? Data is a form of information that people utilize. So what lazai really solves is, and a question to the audience is, do you want your news verified? Do you want your reviews on your products to be actually honest? I would say yes. I don't know about you, but I absolutely want the truth in news, no fabrication. I do want news to not be influenced. So in terms of data and how AI is being used nowadays, AI really empowers everything we do. I'm pretty sure 9 out of 10 people that are listening are using some kind of form of AI. And if you've had experience, when you ask the question, there has been some weird answers at points and some hallucination where it just doesn't make sense. So in terms of where we see being in the blockchain industry, what we can support with this AI boom is really bringing data where you can verify, prove, and also where there is no compromise in the data, especially when we're using it for work, when we're using it for personal health care, when we're using it to, touch on sensitive things that might be, that affects, the global scale. I'm sure a lot of people are using it in many different areas. So what lazai really provides is a solution, almost a framework where you can verify data on chain, how it originated, or how many times it has been used. So basically, you take basic AI data or basic data, and you really add more context to it to understand what's under the hood. It's a common saying in the AI industry: garbage in, garbage out. And when we're using, AI for many things, we need quality data, especially in healthcare, especially when it touches our family and how we use it to kind of inform us, educate us.
So why does this belong on chain? Because can't you just pull data from multiple different sources, and that way, in some way, it's decentralized? Why does it necessarily need to be on the blockchain?
To be honest, nothing really needs to be on chain. But if you want to have another layer of way to verify the data, it should be on chain. And having accountability to the contributors as well is also very valuable. If the news was on chain, you knew the source and you can verify the source. I mean, that just makes it a little bit more valuable. Same thing with data. And in terms of what lazai is bringing, is almost, I would say, marketable and measurable data, where you can know the quality of data, you can measure it, and you could put value to it. So it creates a new economic value. Another good way to really share this and really grasp it is, people thought about digital asset, right? What's digital asset? Right now, I think it's now digital data that you can measure and also put a value to it. And each asset has different values. So it doesn't have to be on chain. You want to verify it. If you want truth, you want transparency. And we're seeing the economy and the industry shifting to automation. So if you want truth verified, agents working or supporting you in your daily lives, you want to be able to see the course and how it evolved and have it verified. Technically, you don't need it, but in terms of the value, I see transparency and ways to verify it is extremely important with our industry.
Help me understand the verification piece because it sounds like that's like a big value add here in terms of what blockchain's adding. But if you verify the source, but the source is still incorrect, does it bring any kind of value?
That's actually a good question, and I've been thinking about it myself, right? Because if you could verify it's a bad source and it's bad data, but at least you have a timestamp, you know who contributed to it. So now you can weigh it maybe with a grade. Now you can grade the source, right? You don't know how good a data piece is. You don't know how good, say, this model is until you have usage. But if this usage gives bad results, eventually people will know. And then now you can grade these data sets. At least you know it's coming from a certain source that doesn't give you verified data. But if you have a source that has been contributing great data, great usage, then hey, this data might be valued higher. Now you have that marketplace of what's valuable, what's not. I hope
And
that
how
answered your
does
question.
it does. It does. How does lazai incentivize contributors? Or like, how does that part work? Because I feel like there's two aspects to this, right? There's the consumers, the people that are consuming the data, and then the sources that are providing the data. How does that work?
Honestly, for us, we created a standard or really applying a standard where builders and people can utilize it on how you commercialize it. I think that's a different component. As you contribute, it's almost having like an IP or signature that, hey, this is a piece that I provided. In terms of the commercial term, how it's structured, that's still to be decided and how it's kind of put together. For that part, we're not quite sure, but we created a marketplace where people can launch agents, they could contribute data, and then that data lives on chain and it could be tradable in a form of tokens, data anchoring tokens.
Obviously, you're the CEO of Metis, but outside of that, why is Metis the right ecosystem to launch this in?
Well, yeah, that's also a great question. In terms of which ecosystem, I think it aligns quite well with what Metis is doing. From our inception, we've been a big supporter, and our ethos is purely why blockchain exists: decentralization. We're one of the first network to provide and go to market with a live decentralized sequencer set. And that has been our true value. In terms of what we're doing with lazai, is really democratizing data as well. A lot of the big data models are owned by big corporations. How it's being used, we're not quite sure. And basically, they're monetizing off users' data. So with lazai and DAT, data anchoring tokens, we can bring that value back to the contributors. You can say, hey, I contributed this data, my signature is on it, it's linked to my wallet, etc. And you can see how many times it's been used. So in terms of Metis, one thing about Metis is we've been around and it's been proven, battle tested. And the key thing is Metis is integrated to a lot of the exchanges globally. So bring accessibility globally is a key thing in distribution and adoption. That with we're building also Hyperion, which is a high performance chain to really support Metis as well. So why Metis? Because we're a big supporter of lazai already since inception, and building on our chain makes complete sense.
So I want to take a step back because you mentioned something, data anchoring token. What do you mean by data anchoring?
Data anchoring token is a new token standard that lazai created. You have your standard ERC20, which shows certain value and how much of that value. You have NFTs, ERCs, where you can say, hey, you have ownership or you don't have ownership. But those are very static. What data anchoring token or ERC 8025 brings is dynamic. So a good way I like to use some analogy is if you look at a car, you see the car condition and you see the mileage. That's all you see. But you don't know where it's been driven, how hard it's been driven, and how many times it has been driven. So with the data anchoring token, you have a more of a dynamic understanding of, say, that car. Instead of saying, hey, it might have been an accident, but I can't see it. Data anchoring token gives you that dynamic information where you have a deeper insight of that data.
So it's kind of like the Carfax.
Exactly. Exactly. Good way to put it, actually.
Yeah. So why don't existing token standards work well for AI assets?
In terms of AI asset, if you really want to bring value back to the contributor, there's no way for, say, the standard tokens or standards to really trace all this. You don't know who has contributed. In terms of with the data anchoring token, you can see the contributor, their payout percentage or their contribution percentage. And also you could put a limit on how many uses of that data can be used. So in terms of what's available, typical standard tokens aren't capable of providing this, because if we want an agentic kind of ecosystem, you have to have a few more parameters where these autonomous agent can work off these rule based instead of just having one parameter. You need multiple parameters where agents can work together. Hey, how many times you can use this data and who gets paid for using this data as well.
So typically, companies, when they release something, it's considered to be their IP. But in a decentralized world, if you're proposing this new token standard, essentially anybody can use it. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the way people can use it is pretty much we have these tools, and what people create or how they use the tools, it's still to be discovered. We're working with we want builders to actually use it and come up with different use case for it. In terms of what Metis is doing or lazai is there's a launch pad where multiple different types of agents from tarot card reading agents as well, from Lazbubu, which is like a pet that evolves where you contribute data and updates to it. So in terms of use case, it's up to the developers to really take it, and we would love to see how they evolve with it.
What have you seen so far that you thought was, that's kind of interesting?
Yeah, I think for us, Lazbubu for Lazai was one of the first kind of initial internal push to see how you can evolve a pet. It's a play off a big character and a really industry trend. And now the way you contribute to it, the way you write to it, it evolves differently. So it's not very predictable, but now it's a very unique case of what this data or this pet or companion is. Like wine with this history, right? Or art piece. It has history, how it evolved, who owned it, how did it get transferred? Hey, this was owned by a famous celebrity. It was sold to XYZ as well, and maybe a sports athlete. So to somebody that might be a collector, they see value in it because the chain of ownership you can see on chain as well.
I remember back in 2022, I actually went to Near Protocol and I met with a team that was focusing on NFTs, and they were focused on specifically dynamic NFTs. So this whole dynamic token theme has been around for some time. Why now? Why is now the time for it to be, successful?
I think between how the dynamic NFT worked, I think with this new standard, it brings up a new set of attributes to the token. Why now? Because we feel like blockchain is needed for autonomous kind of control and rule base for these agents. No other standard can facilitate. If you want to really monetize and really have traceability, this new standard provides that and the tools for us to create these agents to autonomously work in a composable way.
You mentioned monetization. How does this change who gets paid when AI models or agents are being used?
You can actually register and see who's contributed to the data. So you know the source of that data. It's not just, hey, I'm the token creator, this is the wallet. Now you can see different contributors to that data set, and then you can now monetize who contributed to the data set. So in terms of the data, hey, this amount of value is being received for this data. Part of it can be programmed into the token and say, hey, part of, say, 30% goes to the contributor, 20% goes to this site that is distributing it, and the rest goes to XYZ.
So if this works the way it's intended to, where would everyday users feel the impact first?
I would say they would see value in the data, improve models, improve answers, as well as specialized models. In terms of general models, you might not be getting specific, almost, I would say a good way to also to represent this is specialized doctors, right? If a group of specialized doctor contribute to this data set, you know that quality of that data set is a lot higher than a generalist, maybe data set from the hospital. So in terms of quality, you can verify, hey, these guys have the credentials and they are well decorated or experienced. So the information that they provide is a lot more valuable, say, than a general, hey, this is a medical kind of model, but it doesn't have the maybe verification that it came from a very specialized source.
So we talked about a lot of the positive things that come out of this new direction of medicine, Laz AI, but what's the biggest risk or I would say failure point in this approach?
Yeah, I would say for us internally thinking is really having adoption. There's so many models, there's so many different approaches currently out there nowadays that what standard should be used. I know there's other networks and other entities that are also pushing their own version, maybe in earlier stages, to really, hey, this is how you monetize agents, this is how you verify agents as well. So the biggest risk is fragmentation, exactly what we're dealing with in DeFi blockchain. Everybody has a solution, but we don't have a united solution. Even with Ethereum, now they have an Ethereum kind of coalition with all the L2s. Hey, let's create a standard framework because everything is too fragmented. I think that's the thing about decentralization. There's not a standard that everybody wants to abide for. And usually the one with the biggest critical mass, the biggest influence, then they can kind of push a certain standard. But in terms of like as a startup or as a new kind of sector that's really exploratory and innovative, it's hard to really set a standard unless you can really command the rights or really have strong influence with backers or a way to really support, hey, we will set this kind of standard for the industry. This is how we will support it. So for as a industry, there's really hard to really push a standard in the decentralized world.
So we've recently had the Ethereum upgrade. I'm curious to know, being an L2 on Ethereum, how has that impacted, if at all, the way you guys are, going about your business, developing, user experience?
Yeah, for us, one of the things that has been driving revenue for a chain is the transaction fees. But in terms of transaction fees, that can no longer be a sustainable model for a chain. Like cell phones, text message was once charged. Now they're almost absolutely free with unlimited text message. I see blockchain kind of moving in the same direction. As innovation and technology improves, costs should go down and also almost feels obsolete. So for us as a network, as a chain, and all the other chains out there, so what is your other revenue source besides network fees? Is it enough to cover marketing? Is it enough to cover incentives to bring users? So in terms of the upgrade, I think it's great for on the global scale for adoption as well. But for a network, we have to really rethink where the value comes from. We got to rethink, how do we really obtain value in a way where it doesn't take away too much from the users. You're seeing a lot of sponsored gas. Nothing is free. It's coming from somewhere. So where will you extract this value to cover, your cost, your monthly burn? So I think that's the biggest thing as our industry evolves. Nobody wants to pay $5 for transaction, even $1. Now we're in the cents. Even the cents can be expensive, especially like when we say, hey, let's bring on-chain distribution and you're running a supply chain management company, and each kind of verification is a cent. That adds to the bottom line. But we're seeing a lot of network sponsored gas, but that could be a short-term play. But we as a network, we definitely have to find new ways to commercialize, new ways to drive fees, to really create a treasury and sustain ourselves.
You mentioned value, which brings me to a topic that's been really popular last few weeks, mostly in the VC space. It's around, how do you put value on chains? Like, for instance, Ethereum, Solana, Metis, perhaps. How do you value it? What's the real value of it? And is it priced accordingly? What do you think is the right way to value chains?
This is a pretty interesting topic as you're sharing. I would say being in the blockchain crypto sector, how we value a organization or a network can be many different approaches. Perceived value, right? who are the founding team, what's their maybe trajectory of the company, and what's possible. A lot of speculation. You see chains with great tech, but how they reflect as the market perceived is not as strong. And then you have a culture drive, and Doge is a good one. SHIB is a good one, where they have no use case, but maybe attention, awareness, or perceived value as well. So I think there's many ways you can to, view this. Then you will see certain products on certain chain that generate a lot of fees, but it doesn't reflect how they are reflected, maybe say on their token. So where is true value? I guess it depends on the different audits. Hey, I value this chain because of the technology. I can use it. It makes sense. It provides the security that I need. I don't care about, how it's perceived on the trading market. And then you have an audience where, hey, I'm a trader. I'm a speculator. I want to maybe have the upside of this asset. I don't care what the audience or the technology behind it. And a good example is in Korea, trading is huge, but nobody really probably used the tech or engage in the DeFi side. They probably don't even transact, but they just trade the token. And another side is say, hey, I just want to use the product for, paying for my food in this country where it's hard to convert USD, but they accept stables. So those are the kind of perception that I would say, hey, this is how you value a chain or a network. It just depends who you are and who you're asking. If you say at VC, hey, we want the market cap to increase, we want utility, but what matters the most for them is basically adoption. And also actually they probably want to push on the latter side of, hey, we want the market cap to be extremely high.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, there are different ways to perceive this. And each one of those ways of valuation can also be scrutinized. Like, for instance, you mentioned the team, but you look at the example like Story Protocol, where the founder was amazing on paper, but then ended up, and I don't know what those reasons were to this day, but I remember that he ended up leaving and it created this whole like big mess within the media. So there's ways that it works and there's ways that don't, but this is why this is a debate, right? Because there's not one specific way of doing it. I think we're all trying to figure that out, especially as the traditional world is coming in and they have their ways of evaluating. I had Sebastian, who's got 20 years experience in valuations. And, he's saying Santiago Hasib, like, you guys are really smart people, but you guys got it wrong. So everyone's got an opinion on how to do it, but nobody knows exactly the blueprint just yet.
Yeah, my thought is basically how much income you're producing, just like P&L, just a traditional business, how you're sustaining your token, how you're sustaining with your team. If you're not driving revenue, then where's your revenue coming from? Is it from the VC raise? Is it from the token asset itself? But personally, my take coming from the traditional business is your bottom line. What kind of revenue are you generating? And are you
But
building this? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Tom, because you're making this a very interesting conversation now. Because if you're talking about revenue specific, wouldn't applications like Aave, Aerodrome, like those applications that are generating revenue, Uniswap, they would be more valuable than the chains themselves, right? Because the chains, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they're not generating as much revenue unless like Ethereum and you're charging a lot for all the gas fees.
I agree with you. Applications makes the chain. Application can be built on many chains, actually, and they have the freedom. And if they're the real business, if you look at a network, they're basically the roads. They are the infrastructure for commerce. The applications are the value driver. So I've been thinking about this quite a bit. How do you maybe extract, if they built on your chain and they're using your chain, maybe there should be a toll fee, maybe there should be a tax, right, for these applications. There should be. They're using your chain, and how do you supplement that? Maybe some toll fees. So in terms of users paying for it, maybe the application should have a shared revenue with the chain. That's the only way to survive, because a road itself in a city, in a country, will not generate revenue. But it creates a commerce, a way for users to interact, to travel, to transact. So chains aren't built to make money. They're built to facilitate distribution. They're built to connect the world. They're built to bring accessibility. The apps are the business. These are the corporate business in the decentralized commerce world.
Excellent perspective. Thank you so much for that, Tom. And I really appreciated this conversation as a whole. Anything else that we need to know about Laz AI, Metis, any updates that you can share with us?
Yeah, for us from the Metis Foundation side, we see how the different industry, the different technological push from ZK to Bitcoin to AI all correlates. So from our side, we have united that effort to really combine our talent, our leadership to really focus and really deliver a product and an experience for users as a whole. So our focus has been really uniting because you have one camp, hey, we're Ethereum maxi, we're Bitcoin maxi, hey, we're Solana maxi, but we're all correlated. You see that with Base and Solana having a canonical bridge now ties the two network, two different camps. So for us, from the meta side, we see correlating and really unifying our talent and also what we have developed so far to really deliver something very unique and I would say pretty unique compared to the rest of the market because we touch on many different vertical. Now we can combine all that talent and tech to really deliver and build something very impactful.
Thanks, Tom. And where can people find you? Where can people learn more about Laz AI? Give us some links.
Yes, lazai.network is the best way to learn about the innovative space in the AI sector and what we're doing and supporting from the meta side to really push AI and blockchain for the future.
Amazing. Yeah. And for those that are watching, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, show Tom some love. And Tom, thanks again for coming on. This was a real pleasure.
Always a pleasure myself. Thanks, Mikhail.
Take care. If you're a founder or operator in Web3 and want to connect with others like you, head on over to networkspotlight.io and apply to become a member. See you on the inside.